You've probably wondered who the fastest swimmer in the world is, and in my opinion, it's one man and one man only, and that is Caeleb Dressel. He is the fastest to ever swim the 50 freestyle in short course yards and short course meters, where he's been 17.63 and 20.16 respectively, and he's also the third fastest in history in long course meters. Now you could argue that long course meters is the be all or end all. It's the Olympic event, it's the one length of the biggest pool, the Olympic sized pool, and that world record does indeed belong to Cesar Cielo, who's been 20.91. Just the second man to ever go under 21, with Fred Busquet being the first with a 20.96. And I will shout out my dear friend Brett Hawke, who coached both of them swims back in 2009, which were aided by the very controversial full body tech suits. Now, Caeleb Dressel hasn't been under 21, but he has been 21-0 on 3 separate occasions, wearing just the jammer. After leaving the 2022 World Championships early and taking a year away from the sport, Caeleb Dressel returned to the fray of action at the 2023 US World Trial Championships, where he did not do very well. I watched that 50 freestyle and I was curious as to see how his 53 has evolved over the years, and it's clear that there is a pursuit in perfection when it comes to the small changes and even some of the more dramatic changes you see year on year with his 50 freestyle. Today we're going to look at every single one of his 50 freestyles at a taper meet since 2014 when he was just 17 years old. We have loads of 50 freestyles to watch today, so we're going to get right into the action. And there's definitely something novel with him having bad years followed by really, really good years. Without further ado, let's go back to 2014 and watch this 50 freestyle when Caeleb is just 17. Caeleb is going in lane 4. He's wearing a Speedo Laser Racer Elite 2, and he looks nothing like the Caeleb we know today. He has a pretty good start, but it's still a long way from what we see today. And his breakout is very loose on the streamline. He's much flatter with a very bent arm technique and an extremely high stroke rate. A stroke rate is how many strokes you do a minute, and he is doing 72 strokes a minute for the first 25, and it drops significantly to 63 strokes a minute for the second 25. Oh God, that finish. Please tell me you saw that finish. He glides from a mile out. He has a terrible finish, one breath on the 50, not the no breath style we see him and many other top sprinters do today, but he still at 17 goes a fairly respectful time of 22.36, even with one of the worst finishes I've ever seen in a 50 freestyle. That being said, the bent arm technique is so different to how Caeleb swims today, and I'm sure we can see a big change when he moves from Bowls, the school in Florida he was representing at that meet, and Florida Gators, where he will be representing in 2015 at 18 years old, his first year at college. Just to clarify, he went 39 strokes on that first 50 with an insane 72 stroke rate. Caeleb has moved to the Sprint Laser X suit now, which you know I hate and I've made videos about it, and he has a better start. He's still flatter, but has a higher archy kind of stroke. It's like a hybrid between what we saw in that last 50 and what we see in the couple of years following this. It ends up being quite bent, and he really does have an extremely high stroke rate. He starts a little lower at 68 strokes a minute and finishes ridiculously high at 66 strokes a minute for another 39 strokes. This was like a very much refinement of his 2014 swim, a perfect and more matured version with slightly more vertical arms but still bent arm, still an extreme rate, still 39 strokes, and even a glide into the finish but not as bad one. This was a massive PB, 21.53 at 18. This is the swim that everyone was like, oh, this guy's real good. This Caeleb Dressel guy, we want to know what he's going on, what's going on with him, what his deal is. And then that brings us to 2016, the Olympic trials. Can this now 19-year-old make the Olympic team in the 50 freestyle? He goes up in lane 7 and he does absolutely nail the start. His start is great. He takes a lead over everyone, but still comes up at about 12 meters. His stroke looks very different to the year before. we've got a transition in his stroke, open up the armpits and getting that kayak style of motion. He gets choppy towards the end and his stroke degrades, although this is clear that he's having a 53 development and is notably a lot slower stroke rate than the year before, although I couldn't work it out from this video, the quality wasn't great. I couldn't count his strokes either. It's a little slower than the year before, something you might not expect going from 18 to 19 years old, but it's still a 21.8, and he ends up, you know, letting the veterans in Anthony Irvin and Nathan Adrian go on to the Olympics, where Anthony Irvin obviously wins that historic gold. History went all right, in my honest opinion, and Caeleb walked away with a gold medal in the 100 freestyle relay. That being said, 2017, things are very different. No longer does Caeleb want to give the veterans a chance. And at the US trials, he's gone back to the Laser X after wearing the Laser Elite 2 the year before, and he's got the full arc stroke. This is one of his better starts. This is where, like, for people are like, oh, Caeleb has this world-class start no one else can touch. And he's got that straight arm on release, and then he gets to vertical and then bends his arm into the attack or into the catch of the stroke. He's lowered his stroke rate a bit, and he does 37 strokes now. Considering he was 39 2 years before when he went 21.53, he goes 21.53 again with 2 less strokes and a stroke rate of 64 and 61. Just to clarify, he's now 20 years old. And then we're going to a second swim from 2017. This is now World Championships, and he's in a Mizuno. The first and only time he wears a Mizuno long course, and his start is there. His start is where we know him. He nails the start and nails the fly kick into the breakout. Footage is hard to really tear about his stroke, but generally seems like it's the first time he stays big into the finish and doesn't revert back to that small scrappy stroke, which would explain the stroke drop down to 36 strokes, even with the 64 and 62 stroke rate. This was a monumental swim, 21.15, a massive PB for Caeleb Dressel. Then we moved to 2018, and 2018 was a great year for Caeleb in yards. But then he had a bike accident before the Pan Pacs, the international meet of the year, and this swim kind of looks like 2023 trials. Off the back of my video talking about breaks, he had a off swim in 2016 and went 21.1 in 2017, and maybe it's the same thing here. Stroke count seems to be a bit lower because he lets his rate drop below 60 for the first time in any of his 50 freestyles. He wins to 20 metres, but Michael Andrews swims away and absolutely crushes him. He's 36 strokes like he was the year before, but with a lower stroke rate the whole way, which ultimately results in a slower time, 21.93 to be exact. He's now 21, and he had been sponsored by Mizuno, so he wore Speedo. He wore Mizuno's at 2017 Worlds, 2018 NCAAs. Then at this meet, he turns up slow and wearing the Speedo Laser Elite 2. This was before the release of the Valor and the Intent. Then, obviously, the next year, 2019 Worlds, he has the Intent. So Speedo released a better suit than the Elite and the X. And this was the one. This was the one. This is the freaking best swim. 33 strokes. Stroke power. The rate is the lowest it has ever been. And technically, this looks actually more like 2018 than 2017. Maybe like 2016 paved the way for 2017. 2018 did the same to 2019, allowing him to drop closer to that world record. He's big, he's powerful, his start is awesome, and he goes 21.04 for a championship record, although not quite enough to get in that legendary 20-point club. He then obviously has the break because of COVID. He doesn't race long course in 2020, although he does break the short course meter world record. And then it's the Olympic year. First up is trials. And trials is really interesting because he goes 3 extra strokes to the last tapered 53 he done. He's a little more high octane with his stroke, and he rates very high towards the end again. So that's sort of the thing he done. Like, back in the day, he used to drop rate quite considerably. Now he rates quite high the whole way. He almost rushed to the wall here, though. He looks like he's getting a bit like, ooh, chasing the finish, not letting it come to him. I can almost say with certainty this race had more strokes than the previous 21.04. Well, I can. I counted it's 3 more strokes. It's 36. The stroke is the same, straight left arm. I think his 2017 with stroke was the most balanced. I'd like to compare 15 times from all the times he's done, the 21.15, the 21.04 in 19. This was also 21.04, exactly the same as 19, but nowhere near as good in my opinion. 3 extra strokes. He's wearing the pure Valor, not the pure Intent, but chasing it into the wall there. And you know, coming up a little short, and you can see he's really wanting to get, I think, that 20 point. I mean, you would, if you've been 21-0, you would absolutely want to get under that 21 barrier and working on ways to do it. And that brings us to the 2021 Olympics. Every other year, his trials 53 was slower than his major international meet 53. He pops the straight arm out of the fly kick breakout, but he's back on the rate. 68 stroke rate to begin with. Just to clarify, when he went 21-0 for the first time, he started at 60 stroke rate. 8 strokes more a minute, and he just does not look as good here. His stroke pretty much didn't change between 2018 and 2021. This was the last time he used this stroke, but he'd done 5 more strokes than when he went 21-0 in 2019. 38 strokes in the pure intent, 68 and 64 on the rate. You know, he kept the stroke the same, but either mentally and actually consciously played with tempos, or under the pressure of the Olympic Games ended up rushing this race a little bit. I think if he'd been able to contain the power, I think this might have been the 20-point swim. But alas, we won't know for sure. We now move on to 2022, the second to last 53 of the day. This was a switch to full straight arm. It is clear Caeleb has been trying to look at different avenues to move past that 21-0, and the right arm starts to arc towards the end more like he used to. But this is very straight. He looks like this is nothing like the previous swims. You can see that, right? Look how straight arm he's got all the way to the end. Very high rate, 36 strokes. Oh, it just looks a bit bouncy towards the end. I mean, I don't know. I think it is possible that if Caeleb had kept playing around with this more straight arm technique, he may have been able to go a new PB. But 21.29 wasn't a PB, and I personally much preferred the style of swimming he was doing previously. And I think that stroke is more tiring and for very little gain. And that brings us to finally his last swim. In a pure intent at 26 years old, with just 35 strokes, he still has a great start. Well, a good start. He always had a great start. This was just a good start, but he gets eaten up by everyone. And this reminds me of stroke-wise 2017, but feeling-wise 2018. He's flat, he's low in the water. It's not a pretty swim, and he doesn't look like he's given it his all towards the last sort of, 10, 15 meters. Let me know in the comments what, 1, was your favourite of these swims, and 2, what time you think Caeleb Dressel is going to swim next year. I think he's going to be back in the 21s. I think it'll be under 21.3. I'm not sure if it will be 20.9, but I'm excited nonetheless. And I think Caeleb does something for this sport that few swimmers do. He has a element of what's possible when he dives in the water. Who knows how fast he could go? It could be a world record. It could be a 12th gold medal. He really is that special a swimmer, and I'm excited that he's excited to be back in training, and I'm excited to see what's possible. And more than that, I can't wait to see him throw down with Cam McAvoy next year, because damn, Cam looks like he's the man. If you enjoyed this video, please do leave a like. It means a lot. And if you want to see more of this sort of content, do subscribe to the channel. I'm going all in making great YouTube videos, so if you do want to see and support what I'm doing, please do subscribe. As always, I'll see you on the next one.